The hip hinge is a fundamental movement pattern similar to pushing or pulling or squatting that you're going to use in everyday life that will be evident if you need to jump or to do a swing or Olympic lift or deadlift. And as I said, it's something that you will be using if you got to put anything up off the ground efficiently. So it is something that we should learn how to do properly and then apply it, hopefully using it safely in the gym. So when we hip hinge, there's a few things you want to keep in mind before you start taking any weight off the ground. So a good tool we use to start would be a dowel hip hinge drill because it's very hard to do wrong. So what you can do is you take a stick or a dowel and you're going to move the dowel behind your head so that way there's 3 points of contact on the dowel. So in this way I've got my neck is straight, my upper back is touching the dowel, and my low back is touching the dowel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get close to a wall and I'm going to maintain those 3 points of contact with the dowel, and I'm just going to break up my hips first and push my butt back to a wall. So if I can touch the wall, I'm going to go a little bit forward, and I'm going to same thing, I'm going to push back with my hips and touch the wall. And this is going to teach me to break up the hips first and to keep my back neutral and my neck neutral. And this is really the fundamental aspect of hinging. We want to be able to use our hip dominant muscles while keeping our posture in a good, safe position and not bending our neck out of whack. So really that is a fundamental tool we use to teach hip hinging or deadlifting. Other things we want to see if you're going to pull anything off the ground in a deadlift pattern is you want to make sure you have a decent toe touch. So if I go to touch the ground and this is all I have, it's probably going to be, I'm not going to be a safe candidate of picking heavy stuff off the ground, which is fine. It just means you need to work on something, whether it be stability or mobility, and we can help you out with that. So again, if I'm going to do that hip hinge drill, and I'm pretty comfortable with it, and I hip hinge back and keep my back flat, what we want to see is that when you get into the end range of your hip hinge, that you can bring the dowel below your knees, okay? So if I, again, hinge, and this is all I have, well that means I'm probably a candidate for maybe using a trap bar or raising the weight or the bar off the ground a little higher so that way it'd be like an elevated rack pull, or using a kettlebell that's a little bit raised up. So it just puts you in a safer position because you're using the range of motion that you have versus forcing yourself into using a weight that you cannot control with a range of motion you can't control. Other things to keep in mind when we use this drill, which is great because it's self-teaching, is if the dowel comes off my spine, I know I'm doing something wrong, okay? So if I hinge and I see this start happening, it means I've lost that contact and I'm rounding my low back, so I'm kind of tilting into a bit of a posterior tilt, which again is not a safe way to pull weight from off the ground. Or if I'm overarching my back or looking up, I know that I've kind of gone the other way from neutral as well. So that's why the dowel hinge drill is a super easy thing to implement into a warm-up or maybe a bit of a self-test for yourself to see, you know, can I do this properly, or where should I be, what's my starting point? So once you have that, we'll demo with a kettlebell just because it's easy as a first tool. So if I'm going to deadlift with a kettlebell, I'm going to start with the handle so that way it lines up with the arches of my feet, okay? So from there I'm going to go through that same sequence. I'm going to hinge back, and I'm going to bring my hands on the weight. My back should be flat, my hips are above my knees, and my armpits or my shoulder blades are over the weight. So from here, very simply, I would stand up and then return the weight in the same pattern by hinging back to my imaginary wall and then putting my weight down to the same spot each time. So very simply, that would be what a deadlift would be with just a kettlebell. If we're going to get specific, there's other things we can keep in mind once you have the basics dialed in. So when I deadlift from the front, again, my weight should be as close to me as possible. So if I'm using a dumbbell, if I'm using a kettlebell, I have the advantage of being a on top of the weight, which is great. If I'm using a barbell, I want to make sure that weight is as close to me as possible, so it's touching my shins. Regardless of the stance you use, the weight should be close. Your feet should be set, so we'd say with your feet, think about kind of gripping the floor with your feet, like you're trying to tear the ground in half. That's going to help create some tension up through your hips. So set yourself in that way. Your abs should have a bit of tension in them, the core should be braced. So when we hinge, again, I bend at the hips. When I grab my weight, I want to think about activating my lats. So I do that by either turning the elbows back, or thinking about putting the shoulder blades in my pockets, as so, or thinking about crushing an orange into your armpits. Any of those cues would help tighten up those lats, which is going to help keep the upper back in a good position and get the hips nice and stable as well too. In that bottom position, my eyes are looking at about 10 feet ahead of me, so my neck is neutral. And if I have a logo on my t-shirt, if you're spotting me, you should be able to barely see that logo as well too. So again, feet, good upper back position, and lats tight. So again, same thing from the side. Hinge with the hips, grab the weight, tense the lats, neck is neutral, eyes are looking forward at about 8 or 10 feet. When I get myself set up, we want to treat every weight like it's heavy. So when I get myself set up and I brace through my core, I want to momentarily hold my breath, press through, give my breath again, and then same thing, hinge back, and put that weight back on the same spot each time. So it may help as well too. Pretend you've got an X between your feet. That weight should go back to the same place each time as well. At the top of the lift, we don't want to overextend, okay? So I want to finish vertically with my glutes squeezed and my abs tight. This is a finished deadlift. What we don't want to do is overextend and put some stress on the low back as well too. So keep that in mind. So again, to redo that, I get myself set, abs tight, hinge back, grab the weight, big breath of air, hold it, drive through, finish nice and tall by not leaning back too much. Staying tall, neck is neutral, and then hinge back, hips first, and then back to that same spot. One thing we might see with a deadlift, whether it be with a bar or a kettlebell, would be the knees traveling forward. So just think, if I'm squatting the weight, I'm dropping my hips too low, that's going to happen. So remember, it's a hip dominant exercise where we're reaching back and loading the glutes and the hamstrings versus bringing our weight forward, which is going to put more stress on our quads, which are weaker than our hip dominant muscles. It's going to put more stress on the knee. And as you see, it's making me lift more of a distance than being hip dominant and being an efficient place to pull. I'm back to the same spot. So again, the hinge is fundamental pattern. Go through your checklist with that 3-point drill of using a stick and to see if you can keep that posture neutral. A kettlebell is a great way to learn this initially, but once you have the pattern, the same rules apply in barbell deadlifting, using a trap bar, jumping, Olympic lifting, or in everyday life, picking something off the ground. So hope that helps you out. If you have any questions, let us know.